Canon Films.
Welcome to That's Canon, episode 11, the film podcast where we discuss the Canon film library and other similar movies. I'm your host, Philip.
And I'm Greg.
And Greg, now remind
Philip.
me, we watched, what episode, what movie did we watch last week?
We watched Schizoid last week.
Okay. And Schizoid was kind of, I guess, middle of the road.
Middle of the road, not, we didn't hate it, but it wasn't, it wasn't on the top tier along with The Godsend or Crucible of Horror.
I'm amending every bad thing I said about Schizoid. Schizoid is a masterpiece.
A goddamn gem.
Because Dr. Heckyl and Mr. Hype has to be the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen.
Yeah, this was, it's obviously by far a low for our little show here, but it's got to be a low in terms of film history in general. It was just painful to get through.
Written and directed by Charles B. Griffith, a giant piece of shit who should be banned from making any other movies for the rest of his life. And he actually only made 3 other ones after this. This is the biggest piece of garbage I've ever seen. It stars Oliver Reed, too, who's a legitimate actor.
Okay, so did he? I didn't recognize anyone in this movie except for one person who I'm sure you picked up on too, and we'll talk about. But I did not recognize this guy. So he's actually like a legit actor. He's been in other good stuff.
A too legit actor.
Oh.
So interestingly enough, he was back in the 60s in a movie about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He wasn't Dr. Jekyll in it. He was just like a street thug. But this guy has been in movies since the 60s, and I believe his last film that he did was Gladiator, Ridley Scott's Gladiator. He was Proximo in it. Now,
that's the guy who he hired. He's like the former Gladiator who trains new ones, right? Who hires him. Yeah, okay.
So this guy's had an illustrious career. One of the biggest movies that I remember him from that my dad was a really big fan of was the Three Musketeers movies by Richard Lester. He plays Athos in it. And I believe there's about 3 or 4 of those movies that he's in. But no, he's in a lot of movies. The Sting 2, a Terry Gilliam film that I'm a fan of, The Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So this guy is in a lot of films.
Where did he go wrong? I mean, so was this just another case of Canon happened to have him on a contract to do 1 or 2 movies and he just phoned it in for a paycheck? It's got to be what happened here, right?
So he was a leading man for a long time, and he had a very horrible drinking problem. And I think over time, obviously, you start losing it when you're not reliable in the roles that you're doing, right?
So maybe he just couldn't get a legitimate job on a real movie, and he was just taking what he could get.
In fact, in Dr. Heckyl and Mr. Hype, he wasn't the original pick. They wanted Dick Van Dyke to be Dr. Heckyl. The only reason Dick Van Dyke apparently didn't get the role was that he was actually doing another job. Good. And Golan, who is one of the producers and CEOs of
Globus,
of Canon, got Oliver Reed somehow, and Oliver Reed
him.
He's like, I got pictures of your dick, and this will ruin you in the 1980s.
I was gonna say they're going out on the internet, but
it's gonna go out on
paper.
The Tattler or something like that. And what's interesting, though, is Oliver Reed has absolutely no comedic timing. He has no charisma when it comes to comedy at all.
Not at all. He just comes off creepy and kind of rapey in a lot of scenes.
Yes.
It's just uncomfortable.
It's one of those times where you see an actor and he's probably thinking, oh my God, this is going to be great. people are going to think I'm funny. They're going to see this new side of me, and maybe this will get me in a different genre of film that I'm
Yeah.
usually not accustomed to. Like when John Hamm does a comedy film.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's serviceable and it gets the job done, but dude, you're a way better dramatic actor.
yeah, exactly. We all saw Mad Men. And I think,
Yeah.
I think we talked about this a little bit in our Crucible of Horror discussion because I think you and I had known Michael Goff as what's his name? Alfred from the Batman movies, kind of like
Yep.
a kindly old man, and it was how jarring it was for us to see him in kind of a violent horror role. And I think we talked about Robin Williams doing horror movies later in his career. That's yeah, maybe that's what but maybe that's what this guy thought was happening to him too, or he was branching out to a different genre and it would give his career a new lease. But no, God, it did it just tank.
Oh Jesus. And it was this movie was so hard for me to get through. I actually stopped it. I stopped at 45 minutes in because I was sitting around this morning watching and I was like, I can't take this anymore. I stopped. I made coffee. I ate some breakfast. I told
What else is there to
Jackie,
do?
yeah, I told Jackie, I was like, I hate this movie. And I wonder if Greg is even going to finish it. I told her if he came onto the podcast and said that I stopped the movie, I wouldn't be upset. It's that bad.
Yeah, so I woke up a little earlier today and I watched it as well. And Becky had, came down a little later after she woke up. And even she took like one look at the movie over my shoulder and said, is this your movie this week? What the hell is this?
Yeah.
And I just like gave her a dead-eyed look and she knew. I didn't have to say anything. It did the same thing where I didn't stop it. I sat all the way through it, but I actually found myself pausing it a couple times to take a quick note. But the act of unpausing it was really, really hard.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let it stay off.
It's like the movie doesn't want you to watch it. It's so
it's
offensively bad.
it's daring you to watch it. I bet you can't finish me.
It's insane. All right. I guess let's try to talk about the movie and
Yes.
see how far we get before we go,
Fuck
I'm done. So like I said, Dr. Heckyl and Mr. Hype, written and directed by Charles B. Griffith, starring Oliver Reed as Dr. Henry Heckyl and Mr. Hype. Now, obviously, the film is a comedic take on the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which is a novella by Robert Louis Stevenson from 1886. But this one twists it around in which the ugly persona is Dr. Heckyl. Now, Dr. Heckyl is extremely ugly, extremely ugly,
Yeah.
cartoonishly ugly. In fact, the movie
Yeah.
opens up on him and he has two mismatched color eyes. One was red and the other one was blue or something. He has a giant wart nose, a rat's nest for hair, and the one horrible thing about the movie is that there's this damn voiceover the entire time.
Yeah, it's like him talking. It's a kind of inner monologue, which we hear. It's like a different voice, which
Yeah.
you don't realize at the time that it's his transformation. But it doesn't match the speaking voice that we get from this monster. And I mean, you talk about how ugly he is. I mean, it's ugly in the universe. I mean, if I were a real person looking at this person, I would think it's hideous. But also, the makeup is bad from a perspective of me watching a movie.
Yes.
It looks like they ripped the wig. Like the wig looks like it, like when cotton burns, it kind of gets that kind of like
Yeah.
crinkly look to it. I don't know how to describe it, but the hair on that the wig that they gave him is just horrible looking. The makeup is all blotchy, it doesn't like blend really well. It looks like it was done in probably like 10 minutes. It's just horrible.
And one thing I noticed is that when he's walking through the town, he's wearing these black gloves, but yet he has cutouts for his horribly green fingernails.
Yeah, I guess they're supposed to be monster fingernails, but they just look like bad fake like nail salon nails.
Just cut your damn nails. He walks around like an asshole. His ass is popped out, like as if he's
Oh yeah.
He's hunched forward, his ass is popped out, and he's almost trying to walk straight legged. Like he doesn't want to bend his knees.
Yeah, you know what that reminded me of is that Monty Python sketch, like the Ministry of Silly Walks,
Yes.
where John Cleese
The
is walking
funny
around like
thing,
that. Yeah, yeah.
except Oliver Reed isn't funny at all.
No, it just I was, completely straight faced through most of the movie, including his stupid walk.
There's a lot of visual gags that are going on right now as he's walking through the town. The one that was probably the funniest is that he gives a blind homeless person money, and then as he walks by him, the homeless man just dumps it out.
Was that intentional, or did he? I thought what I was expecting was he actually like put change in some guy's coffee, and he was going to get pissed at him. But no, I didn't really understand it.
We don't even know if it's a joke. Um, they live in a fictional place called San Texaco, and as he's walking around, he's giving this voiceover about how ugly he is and how he wants to be loved and how handsome people can get away with murder.
Yeah.
He goes to a bench, a bus bench. He sits down. Everyone walks away from him and kind of, they, oh, he's
Oh,
so ugly. And that's when we meet the pretty woman, or her name in the film is Coral, who's played by Sonny Johnson. Sonny Johnson is probably
cool.
one of the better actors in this film. Coral was also in Animal House as Otter's co-ed.
Yeah, that's a low bar for this movie. She didn't have to do too much to make that best in the movie kind of grade.
No, she did two other films after this: The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia, and Flashdance.
Really?
Unfortunately, Sonny died in 1984 due to a brain hemorrhage.
Oh, geez, that
She was
was what, 40
30
years
years
after
old.
this? Oh, wow,
Yeah, not too long after this film. So I'm not
that's
blaming
sad.
this film, but
Did this shitty movie kill that great promising actress?
you never know.
I'm not saying
Uh,
it didn't happen. I'm just asking questions.
exactly. So as Dr. Heckle's looking at Coral getting on the bus, he's going inside of his head, oh, she didn't notice me. And she gets on the bus and she goes away. And the film gets even more fucking insane. So as Dr. Henry Heckyl goes to work, he works in this doctor's office,
I guess
and it's a cavalcade of assholes in here.
it looks like a bathhouse.
It does.
It's a really strange doctor's office.
Greg, I hate this movie. So as Dr. Heckyl gets in, he meets Doctor Who, the crappiest joke that you'll hear repeatedly throughout the film. Yes, we get it. It's Doctor Who from Doctor Who. Like,
Get
ugh.
the name. It's the same as the other show that you watched, probably.
Yeah. So Doctor Who has invented this new thing called acutickling, which is like acupuncture and acupressure, but better because it involves his fetish of tickling women.
Just hearing you say the word acuticklist makes me want to punch something.
Yes.
It's an annoying ass word.
It's not even cleverly funny.
No.
Acutickling. Anyways, I Dr. Heckyl goes up to the front desk clerk, and her name is Mrs. Finebum. That's right. The joke is that she has a nice ass. Boom, done. He gets his he gets his mail. And did you notice though throughout that entire scene that every woman that they spoke about or mentioned in it had a term or a name that involved having a nice ass or a nice piece of their body?
Oh yeah.
One was like Mrs. Pert Bottom, which is just fine bum, just even worse.
Yeah, I think all of the names in general in this movie are some kind of terrible pun, but the women get it the worst.
There was Nurse Lush Tush, Nurse Rosenrump, Nurse Talltail.
Rosenrump, I missed that one. Oh,
it was so bad. So, anyways, he gets his mail. Miss Finebottom, or whatever the fuck her name is, she's throughout the entire film. She doesn't really do too much, and she's played by, I don't know how to say her first name. It's like Maya Danziger, who, thank Christ, actually went on to do films that were actually worth your time to
Good for
watch.
her. Good for her.
So, if you're going to watch any of our other films, watch National Security with Martin Lawrence and Steve Zahn. That one actually made me laugh when I remembered about it. So he gets his mail, and then we meet Dr. Vince Hinkles, who created a diet paste. Now, this diet paste is supposed to be when you ingest it, it sheds away all your weight. And there's a lot of visual gags involving fat people because,
Get it? Because they're fat.
yep,
God damn this movie.
Dr. Hinkles has a woman sitting on a chair that's suspended by a weight measure. Did you notice that? Like something that
Oh
you would weigh a
no.
fish with.
Like one of those like spring scales.
Yeah.
Oh geez.
So what happens is that Dr. Hinkles is giving all these fat ladies the serum. But meanwhile, Dr. Heckyl is confiding into him that he's going to kill himself because he's so butt ugly.
Get it? Because suicide is funny.
Yep. At one point, one of the visual gags is that Dr. Hinkles pulls a thermometer out of one of these women's ass and kind of just like looks at it. Really weird.
This is I think the part where I noticed the names of the women. I think one of the overweight women was named Fran Van Crisco.
Yes. It's
God damn.
it's horrible.
It's really bad.
It's like someone went to their like their 5-year-old and was like, "Hey, we need a bunch of funny names. What do you think?"
What do you got, little Timmy? Mrs. Fartenlotter.
Yeah. There was Mrs. Fritz Pitzel, Fran Crisco. Yeah, absolutely horrible. But we find out that Dr. Heckyl is a podiatrist.
Yes.
He's actually a real doctor. Podiatry is the study and the health of feet. So,
yes, not tickling or fat paste administration.
Yes. So we meet his first patient. It's this guy. He has 2 left feet. He literally has 2 left feet. Not like the joke, "Oh, I have 2 left feet." He literally has 2 left feet. And he can't walk right. And Dr. Hector's like, "Well, we're going to have to find the guy who has 2 right feet so you can get a right foot."
That's right. We can't attempt a transplant until we find someone with 2 right feet.
Exactly. He tries to sell Dr. Heckyl a car, but Dr. Heckel's like, "Why would I need a car? I can't even pick up women." Okay.
Which makes no damn sense whatsoever.
None. Well, now we hear a bunch of commotion, and all the fat women are now skinny.
That's right. Yeah. So that's like the first transformation of the really terrible transformation scenes we get, where they kind of make this like pucker, like I just drank a cup of lemon juice, kind of like a sour face, and then we get strobe lights, and then suddenly they're all skinny.
I think the strobe lighting effect of them transitioning was okay, but the pucker face part, why?
I guess
it's not funny.
It's not funny. And that's the thing. Like, you could ask why in so many points in this movie, and the answer is always going to be because the idiot who made it thought that it was funny at the time.
Yeah.
And it was most definitely not.
Well, after we see all the fat women become thin, we see Dr. Heckle's next patient, which is Lieutenant Mac Druck, played by Virgil Fry, who is Soul Moon Fry's dad. Soul Moon Fry was Punky Brewster from the 80s. He starred in a couple other films. Some of them are actually really good, like Colors with Robert Duvall. You should probably watch any other movie that any of these people ever did beyond this one.
Except this one.
So Lieutenant Mac Druck probably had the best jokes in the film, and they're still shitty. He is a super rough and tough detective, grizzled by the hard streets of San Texaco.
Whatever.
He has super flat feet. In fact, he took out Dr. Heckyl took out a level and was like, "Yep, flat feet." So what Dr. Heckyl puts his feet in like a vice type contraption.
What was
and I don't get
that.
Yeah, I don't get the point of what this is supposed to do, Greg.
I guess to unflatten his feet, it's
But all it does is it bends them.
the answer, Phil, is the idiot who made the movie thought it was funny.
Yeah. So Dr. Hector gives the lieutenant a bullet and it was like, hey, bite on this. And the lieutenant eats it. And then you hear like a gunshot go off. And he's like, see, I don't feel pain. And then he puts a cigar on himself and he's like, see, I don't feel pain. And then he slices his hand open and he goes, see, I don't feel pain. Meanwhile, Dr. Heckyl has this vice-like contraption and he's wrenching his feet and there's blood draining. And the lieutenant is making fun of Dr. Heckyl about how ugly he is. And then the scene sort of ends.
Yeah, it's like the whole first, 10, 15 minutes is just really poorly executed sight gags in this weird, like Turkish bath doctor's office, and
Yep.
none of it lands. I mean, I guess it sort of establishes the whole scene, and we get to see these weird, I guess you could call them medical professionals in doing what they do. But it goes on way, way too long.
Dr. Heckle's the only true medical professional. All these other people are just quacks.
Acuticulist, god damn it.
Acuticulist. And next, Coral comes in, and she's sitting on the exam bed, and she's going, "Oh, I have ugly feet. I think I'm getting a bunion." Now, Coral's actually a very beautiful woman, so she's lamenting about how ugly her feet is. And of course, Dr. Heckle's a podiatrist, and he turns the bed around and she freaks out. She's like, wow, you're ugly.
The friggin' no.
Yeah. And he's like, I get that a lot. I'm not too worried about it. And then you hear a voiceover from Dr. Heckyl, and he's like, these feet are perfection. Finally, a foot I could love. That's dialogue from the film.
Okay. So I wrote that down too. And the best part comes after where you just ended it. He says, at last, a foot I could love, a foot I could eat.
Oh my God. It's
foot fetish, I guess, now.
You have fallen into a foot fetish. And what else? What do they else call them? Like nice guy films. Like,
nice
you know,
guy,
like I'm a nice guy, and you'll eventually see the nice guy part coming up. Coral goes, yeah, I wash my feet twice a day and I go to the podiatrist twice a year. That's what my mom told me to do. And he's
because
like,
that's a thing that happens.
Yep. I forgot who says it, but I have a line of dialogue here that says, my heart is in your feet. Oh, Dr. Heckyl says that to her, right?
That's more of his weird voiceover.
Yeah, he's voiceovering. He's like, my heart is in your feet. He loves her feet. He loves her. And he was like, okay, you should make an appointment for the next day. Oh, isn't that too soon? It's never too soon. And then
at the bus stop.
Yep. As soon as she leaves, Dr. Heckel's like, cancel the rest of my appointments for the day. And he takes out like shears from a drawer and tries to kill himself.
They're too small to be like hedge clippers, but they're too big to be scissors. Yeah. I don't know what they were.
In his voiceover, he calls himself an ugly piece of shit. And then he puts the shears on his neck. And then Dr. Hinkle comes in.
Diet doctor.
Essentially diet doctor. That's what we'll call him. No one knows no one fucking cares what his name is. Dr. Diet Doctor comes in and stops Dr. Heckyl from killing himself inadvertently. And he gives Dr. Heckyl the serum to hide because he's afraid all these fat women are going to come and steal it.
Right, because it's apparently a rousing success. These women dropped what he said, like 60 pounds in 6 minutes.
Yeah,
and they're going to break my office down and come in to look for it when they find out how great it is. So you got to hide it for me.
Dr. Diet Doctor gives a warning though. He's like, one drop is enough to make you shed weight. 2 drops is enough to make you disappear.
Enough to kill a horse.
Enough to kill a horse. You've killed a horse? What do I need a horse for? Okay. So Dr. Diet Doctor has been killing horses as well.
Apparently.
Dr. Heckyl, as soon as Diet Doctor leaves the room, drinks the entire damn vial. And you hear cartoonish sound effects.
Oh God. And it's like the start of what becomes just way too many stock sound effects. It's like they ripped them all off of episodes of Looney Tunes or something. to try again to try and be funny, it just becomes so annoying.
You know, the movie kind of reminds me of, in not a kind of it reminded me of way. So in the Twilight Zone, the movie, there's a part that Joe Dante does. Have you ever seen that movie?
I haven't no.
Okay, so let me describe to you. This woman finds a boy in a diner. Now, the boy, obviously, you can tell there's something different with him. He can
Mhm.
uh he can disrupt static or electricity and stuff like that. So he's causing some, playful havoc in the
The
diner.
mayhem.
She takes him home, and then she slowly starts going into almost like this Looney Tunes cartoon world, where she realizes he can actually control the fabric of time. He can control reality, and it's just this
Oh,
kid lashing out for attention because no one's there to kind of like scold him and love
because
him and
everyone's
teach
afraid of
him what
him.
to do. Exactly. So you eventually go through this giant cartoon world, and then at the end you come back to reality. This movie starts off in a slight cartoon world, but as soon as we transition to this part where he drinks the vial, you go into this Looney Tunes cartoon world, but it never gets better.
No, it doesn't. It just goes down a shitty well of cartoonishness.
Yes. So he drinks the entire vial, hoping that he's going to kill himself. And then he looks in a mirror and he goes, I didn't die. My luck's still holding. He says it twice. He says that line in his head and then he says it out loud.
Like the didn't the director write this?
Yeah,
He was real proud of that line, I guess.
I guess. So Dr. Hector goes home, and over the radio, you can hear how 7 lonely, ugly people try to kill themselves today. Unfortunately, they all survived.
Ha ha ha! Suicide funny.
Yeah. Then he puts a lion skin on him and goes, "Good night, Spot, my only friend."
Oh
And then
god, that
there's
lion skin.
yes, the best side actor in this film.
That's
Uh
that is the that lion skin is the audience proxy in this
oh yeah,
movie because it looks miserable as shit.
it does. He's like, at least I'm dead.
At least I'm
Uh
dead.
there's a dream sequence where we see Coral. She's like spinning around. It's blue and it's red, and it's blue and it's red, and then you see a strobe effect, and Dr. Heckyl turns into Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed, a very classically handsome man. He's got the strong chin, he's got the blue eyes, he's got black hair. Um,
Okay, so
and
we have to talk a little bit about this while you mentioned it because this guy, I mean, you say that okay, he's like classically handsome guy, and he clearly thinks so later in the movie. I don't see it. He
really,
no, 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 no. I think he looks like a big wad of clay. I think he is the weirdest looking dude that I've ever seen. He's got like his neck is thicker than his head. He looks like Mark Hamill, but inflated a little bit with bad hair.
damn, that is harsh. Maybe in his older age, he definitely looks not nearly as handsome. I'm gonna send you a photo on Discord.
Okay.
This is him younger. I mean, he looks in that photo that he could be fucking Wolverine.
That's true. The chops, the mutton chops.
Yeah.
You know what it is? I think that was harsh, but it fits because
Because he's actually a blob of clay that they animated.
But I think it is like it wouldn't have jumped out to me as much as if you weren't so narcissistic throughout the rest of the movie. Like the fact that he constantly is talking up how pretty and like beautiful and handsome he is, it just made me fixate on every little imperfection.
Yeah.
And
I could totally see that.
yeah, sorry, yeah, I like went out down that rabbit hole, but
You would assume that when he transforms, he would turn into someone like Brad Pitt or someone like John Hamm, who is like I guess very
yeah, like
known
someone
like that is a handsome dude.
unambiguously good looking dude.
Yes,
This guy, like you said, maybe when he was kind of in his prime, but I just don't see it now. It does not
maybe
fit.
standards were lower in the 80s.
I guess so.
As he turns into a pile of animated clay from a hideous monster, he doesn't seem too happy at first. And he doesn't really get happy until he starts touching his feet. And he realizes that his feet aren't hideous anymore. I guess being a podiatrist, He's happy that he doesn't have ugly
Yeah.
feet.
So I think was that the first time? Because yeah, we see that when he's in his monster form, he has like one foot is just way bigger than the other, and it's all kind of
Yeah.
gross looking. That's this is the first time we see that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Nothing really, yeah, they kind of like, despite it being a defining characteristic and somewhat of a talking point throughout the film, you don't really get to see his monster feet too often.
Yeah, no, just to kind of briefly here before they transform into normal feet.
As Oliver Reed has now transformed into a real man, he also realizes that he's a real asshole because it's the middle of the night and he starts singing opera. And he threw his shoe out the window and then he goes outside to throw away the trash singing, and everyone's freaking out.
Rightfully
Everyone.
so, being pissed
Yep.
off this idiot singing loudly in the alley.
I would be extremely upset. But then we meet Mrs. Quibble, who comes outside. It's the downstairs neighbor. And there's a little bit of dialogue, but you know what's coming. Forced sexual situations as Mr. Hype starts
Yay.
kissing her. And you think they're about to make love. Love is the word. Love is the logo, Mrs. Quizzle says to Dr. or Mr. Hype. Because you start seeing this motif of Mr. Hype wants to be told that he's loved. He wants to be told how handsome he is, and
Yes.
he's not feeling it from the downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Quibble, and
Nope. Not
he
enough
gets
for him.
he gets very upset, and they stop their amorous adventure.
They're
And
kind of
Mrs.
like,
Quibbles like, "Hey, you need to hurry up because Bull, my husband's coming home, and he's gonna squish you like a frog." And holy shit, does that set him off? He's like, "I'm a frog. Frogs are ugly. I'm not ugly."
could you?
And then he says, "Is my face only good enough to rub into feet, to rub bunion-ridden feet?" And then he takes her foot and rubs it all over his face.
Oh, God.
Oh,
This whole that
Greg.
this was it was I'm amazed you remember as much about this little scene as you do, because it was all kind of a blur to me, because I just remember
It
them
is.
like rolling around on top of each other really awkwardly, knocking stuff down, and I couldn't hear a word that they were saying because the soundtrack, like the voice track, was
Oh
way
yeah.
quieter than all the sound effects of things being smashed. I just checked out for probably a minute while this was going on.
So Mr. Hype breaks a lamp and and now it's like exposed, right? Like the bulb is broken. It's the socket that leads to where you would like
Oh, where you screw the
screw in
bulb
the
in,
light
yeah.
bulb, and he sticks it on her toe and he electrocutes her to death. There's this weird effect, and she's dead.
You know what it reminded me of? That scene in I think it's Home Alone 2 where Marv gets electrocuted in the basement
Yes.
and they like flash a skeleton with a Marv wig
Yes.
on,
That part was great.
which is fantastic. But fuck this movie because it's worse
Yeah,
than that.
it is. And then as she's dead, Mr. Hype goes, "She's dead, and I'm still a virgin." And he carries out the dead body to throw into a dumpster, and he skips away. And then you hear it.
You hear that
The
luscious
melodic,
voice.
majestic sounds of Dick Miller. Dick Miller.
Miller, no, stay away.
It's Miller time, baby. I love garbage. I love garbage, Dick Miller says as he takes a hat from the dumpster and he talks about how great it is.
Oh
Um,
God. I just I feel like we're screwed because we've sort of established the fact that Dick Miller was just like a canon guy at this point, and I just feel so bad that his goofy kind of character talents are wasted in these horrible movies.
I exactly. And it was interesting because I told Jackie that Dick Miller was in it and she's like, "Oh, you love him." And I
Oh,
was
you
like,
knew
"Yeah,
ahead of
but
time. Okay.
but oh no, this was after." I was like, "Oh, Dick Miller was in it."
Oh, okay, I
And
gotcha.
she was like, "Oh, you love him." And I was like, "Yeah, but this movie was bad."
He did Dick Miller dirty.
Yeah. Uh so Dick Miller obviously he saw the dead body in there. This is, I guess, comedy. He doesn't care. He just takes the hat and he walks away.
I love garbage.
I love garbage. Then the next day, Mr. Hype is out and he sits on the bench where the bus stop is, and no one really notices him. Neither does Coral.
Yep, just looks like a regular dude.
Yeah, no one really cares about him. He's not, super noticeable now because he's just a normal looking human being.
Hmm.
He jumps into the bus and he's doing this really super awkward flirting. He's like popping his collar and winking his eye and shit. It is
Peacocking.
horrible. And then
Yeah.
he starts getting pissed because no one's noticing him.
No. Coral is just like thinking he's some kind of bus stop creep and is trying her damnedest to get away from him
Because he is
because he
a
is a bus
bus
stop creep.
stop creep. And then you hear this horrible commercial for this thing
The
called
bunny.
Bunny
Yeah.
Burrito. It's like you can get the Bunny Burrito, the Bunny Burger, the Bunny this. And
Bunny Thermidor. Get it? They're eating
exactly,
rabbits.
it's
That's the joke.
bunnies. And then you meet Debbie Kate. Debbie Kate is the waitress of this outdoor cafe, the Bunny Burrito. And that at this point, Mr. Hype actually doesn't have a name. He's like, "What's in a name? It's all hype," and it's from a newspaper that he's reading it. And Debbie Kate goes, "Is that your name, Hype?" And he's like, "Yeah, I guess that'll do."
Yes, it is now.
So they make plans to go on a date, and in the voiceover for Mr. Hype, he goes, "I'll see you cold and coffined, you cheeky bitch." So he's already turning evil.
This, like, I mean, you sort of get a little bit of that when he electrocutes that one lady in that weird basement apartment, but this movie, a couple times when he's getting violent, it takes weird tonal left turns into.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gone past like what you could consider black comedy and just becomes dark.
It goes beyond comedy into the twilight zone of this isn't fucking funny anymore.
This is like cranking up the weirdness to 11.
Um, so as we cut back to the hospital where Doctor Who is making fun of Fine Bum again, saying that her perfume is bad and he must have got it Army wholesale.
Okay, yeah, this was legitimately. I told Becky this after we finished watching the movie. This was the only time that I actually got a chuckle out of this movie. Is the exact line you said. He's like sniffing her perfume like a creep, and he says, "Oh, did you get that bargain? What was this, Army surplus?" I'm like, that was legitimately funny.
Oh man. Mr. Hype informs Fine Bum that he's taking over the practice from Dr. Heckyl because he's dying. He's on his deathbed.
Yep.
And
I'm his cousin coming in from I don't know if he says where he came from, but
I'm his
everyone
cousin
just buys it.
who's not a doctor. He even states that he's not a doctor. It's just something that it's in his blood to be a podiatrist.
Oh, figure it out.
Mrs. Feinbaum obviously thinks that this is weird. She's the only character who's actually intelligent and is what would consider to be an actual human being,
like a sensible person questioning this hack, this lump of clay who's trying to take over this guy's job.
Dr. Fat Dr. Pill and Doctor Who,
Diet
Doctor Fat Doctor, are looking at all the former fat women. And this sounds horrible. We're saying fat so much.
Who are all the women who, when they lost all that weight, suddenly forgot how to wear bras because none of them are wearing bras anymore.
And Doctor Who is tickling them with feathers. So anyways, the detective's back and he pulls a gun on Mr. Hype and he's like, "Who the hell are you?" Mr. Hype pulls out an ingrown tail from his foot. It's a fucking nail in his foot. It's a nail that you drive into the wall, or the nail that I wanted to drive into my face while I was watching this movie.
Oh, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Then Mr. Hype takes out a grinder and starts chipping away at the detective's feet.
Yeah, you feel like, I mean, at this point, God, you've okay, we get it. He doesn't feel pain. He's got weird feet. We've played this joke earlier in the movie. It's not funny then. It's not funny now.
We're not even halfway over with the movie.
Yeah, I think this is like right around the time where I started like looking at the elapsed time on the movie, like just habitually. And I think it was like, we're like halfway through the movie, not even.
Yeah.
Just groaning myself.
And you're like, I know this is a pandemic and we really can't go outside and do much, but I'm wasting my time watching this film. And that's all we have now. It's just infinite amounts of time. Mr. Hype says that he's going to cut his feet off and puts ointment on them. And then there's like a joke about like, it insinuated gay sex. And
Haha, gay panic.
yep,
That's
and
the
Mr. Hype
joke.
is like, if I cut off your feet, you can't follow me. And then the scene ends. There's never a transition in any of these damn
Nope.
movies.
We've
Uh,
got weird jokes. Just got to shove them in to get to 90 minutes.
Mr. Hype is about to buy a car from the double left footed car salesman. The
That's
car
right.
costs
Yeah.
$29,999, which is a discount, Greg. It's discounted. Now, this
That's
is 1980.
yeah, that's a lot of money in $1980.
That's $94,758.98.
This car made out of gold.
Uh, I said $94,000, $758.98 right there. This movie is making me lose my mind. Dr. Hype, Mr. Hype says that he was referred here by Dr. Heckyl, and the left-footed salesman is like, "Oh yeah, he's a good guy." And Mr. Hype just calls him a horny toad.
That's
Um,
right. Yeah.
and Mr. Hype does not want the car salesman to go with him. He needs to drive this car because it's like a lady, and he has to get to know it.
Ugh.
So he drives away.
Said the lump of clay.
Said the lump of clay. And the detective is following him. Now, the detective character is probably the most useless character because obviously the detective is wanting to arrest one of these men. And there's plenty of crimes committed on Mr. Hype's adventure with a car right now as he almost runs down a woman in the middle of the car.
Oh, that's right. Like there's some woman, she's like walking her trash out to the curb.
Yeah.
And we get this weird fast motion scene, like chase scene
Yep.
of him running this lady down the street with his car. There's like but there's no silly like Benny Hill kind of music or anything over it. It's just fat like sped up, and it's
Yeah.
I guess it's supposed to be funny. I don't know.
In reality, they're going 1 miles per hour and then they speed it up to make it. Look at them. They're going fast. It's like they're the Flash.
Get it? It's a joke. He almost killed this lady.
Yep. It's pretty bad. And then Mr. Hype pulls up next to Coral and he goes, "Are you on the way to the podiatrist? I should know. I followed you from work today." That's right. He's a nice guy. A nice guy is a man who thinks that he's doing nice things when in reality, he's a complete and utter asshole. Fortunately for Coral, her boss shows up and protects her from Mr. Hype. And then as Mr. Hype is driving away, he turns even more into a nice guy as he goes, "Is he more handsome than me? What is she like about him? I'm handsome."
She likes that jock.
Yeah. As he's careening through the road, he's almost hitting people. He's almost sideswiping cars.
Mm-hmm.
And then the camera zooms up into a woman bent over into the middle of the road again. She's wearing Daisy Dukes and it gets right up to her ass.
Like right on. It's uncomfortably close. And it just hangs on that shot of this woman bent over with the camera like right in her ass. Now, it's really uncomfortable.
I know we disagreed a little bit when it came to Gas Pump Girls. And I was like, oh, I don't mind the sexual jokes and everything else like that and the sleaziness. This one really upset me because I wasn't expecting it from this movie. This wasn't the kind of movie where I was like, I'm going to get sleazy ass shots.
Yeah, that's true. I think it does. The context is as bad as it is. It does make a difference sometimes where like you sort of, like you said, expect that from. You knew that was what you were going to see when you went into Gas Pump Girls. You did not expect it from like what I was hoping was going to be like a lighthearted, campy spoof of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, not sleazy ass close-ups.
It was bad. Yeah. It was really bad. The woman, unsurprisingly, is a hooker. And
I dropped my shit in the road. I dropped my purse in the road.
Yeah, that's right. She was like British too for some reason.
She was. I don't understand why. What's she doing here in LA, I guess?
Yeah, San Texaco.
San Texaco.
Mr. Hype has this voiceover again, and he's like, "Oh, she has a lovely smile, and I think this woman can love me because she smiled at him." Because he's a nice guy.
Classic nice guy syndrome.
When a woman smiles at a nice guy, there's love in the air.
Clearly.
But Mr. Hype loves Karen. But you know what? He's going to be a good sport and have fun with her. The detective is just watching all of this, not doing anything.
Not a damn thing.
So Mr. Hype takes the hooker back to his house as the detective is walking around still outside of their house. Now, Mr. Hype and the hooker, they're in their bed. They're about to be in the throngs of passion. They're going to be all
Yes.
over each other. But first, she has to pass. It's kind of like a test with a lion puppet.
Oh God, this poor lion.
He died, Greg. A man.
He wishes he were alive so he could die again.
There was a man at one point, Greg, in the past before this movie was made, and they went, "We're going to need a lion skin. We need to go to
Yes.
Africa, and we're going to hunt down an innocent lion in the Serengeti." So they went out with their rifles and they pointed it at this lion and they shot it. And they went, "Fuck, this is the lion. This is the lion that we're going to make a rug out of, and we're going to put it in the motion pictures. The motion pictures that everyone's going to watch, and they're going to go, that lion is
You
awesome.
don't know it yet, lion, but you're destined for great things.
That lion died for nothing. And it shows how hopelessly alone we are in this universe.
Oh God.
Because if a beautiful creature like that can be killed for a horrible film like this, what else is there to stop anything from happening in this world, Greg?
I don't know.
What if the fucking aliens come down today, Greg, and they kill both of us to put us as human rugs in their motion picture? And it's the Dr. Heckyl and Mr. Hype of their motion picture.
The Martian Dr. Heckyl and Mr. Hype.
Yeah. I couldn't possibly believe that. I couldn't to think the sheer terror that lion had as it was dying, not knowing what its fate lied beyond death. I feel so bad for it.
Oh yeah, you can see it in this dead taxidermy lion's eyes through the rest of the movie. It just looks. If it could look any deader in the eyes, it would.
If it could look more dead beyond death, it would.
I think we have to. We got to put a screenshot of this lion up on our Twitter because people listening, you've got to see this. It's hilariously sad.
It's really bad. Mr. Hype, you realize after the first encounter, he needs these women to like acknowledge how handsome he is and praise him and say that they love him. It's almost like a serial killer, right? Like the serial killer needs like Buffalo Bill needs the skin of the woman in the hole, right? That is his driving force for existence. He kidnaps women, he skins them, and he wears them. Mr. Hype falls in love with women immediately, gets them to say how handsome he is and how much they love him, and then he never believes them because this woman is lamenting how handsome he is and how much she loves him. And then Mr. Hype goes, "I don't believe you." And then he has the lion acting like a puppet.
Yeah, there's like hand up the back of it or something.
He bites her with the lion puppet and kills her.
And it's pretty grisly too. Like I wasn't expecting like a bunch of blood comes out of her neck. It's kind of a grisly murder scene, which again I was not expecting from what should have been a lighthearted, goofy comedy.
Yeah,
this was a grisly murder.
It is extremely weird, right? And in fact, like the previous murder with the electrocution was campy, almost comedic. It's almost like someone tried to be funny with the last death. This one was just spiteful and angry.
Yeah, it wasn't funny.
Oliver Reed wraps her up in a blanket. And he walks her out, throws her body into the dumpster. Did you notice that the detective was right there watching like the entire thing?
Was he creeping in the window on them?
He was just standing outside.
Oh, I did.
Literally just standing outside. But thank God, Dick Miller comes in and saves the scene.
Miller, no.
He literally sees the dead body in the dumpster. He just doesn't care.
No one has any respect for trash.
Yeah, no one has any. He's very hurt when people don't respect trash because Dick Miller really respects trash.
He loves trash. Film. I feel like we didn't mention it. I can't remember if we mentioned it the first time he shows up, but Dick Miller, we only really know him by his voice at this point because when he's shown up this time and the time before that, he's like off in the background, out of focus, just kind of rummaging around a dumpster. Yeah, we just hear his voice. We don't actually get to see this American treasure who is Dick Miller.
Yeah,
in front of the camera.
It's such a shame. He should have been Mr. Hype and Dr. Heckyl. I think that would have been a lot of better film.
Perfect.
So we cut back again. It's night now. It's daytime. It's such a weird transition. We cut back to the used car salesman, and he's like, "Oh, this guy stole the car," And the cops are like, well, we can't trust the word of a used car salesman. Mr. Hype shows up and he goes, hey, that man can't walk straight. Arrest him. And they do it.
Just the worst cops. Worse maybe than the movie in Schizoid, or than the cops
Yeah.
in Schizoid.
So Mr. Hype goes back to the office. Mrs. Finebottom has all the other doctors, the other two doctors. They're all very suspicious now of Mr. Hype.
Rightfully so, yeah.
Mr. Hype has decorated his podiatry office. It looks like he blew up a bunch of condoms and hung them from the ceiling.
Okay, yeah, those balloons were really weird, right? They were just like
Yes.
inflated. Yeah, they're right. They look like inflated condoms, just kind of like awkwardly sized balloons, I guess.
He has like dipped chocolate fruits, which is always so romantic. Presents, stuff to woo women.
Yeah,
Uh,
in a romantic doctor's office setting.
so
Perfect.
Dr. Fat Pill, what do we call him?
Diet doctor, diet
Di-
doctor.
Dr. Diet Doctor shows up and he goes, hey, Mr. Hype, I went to Dr. Heckle's house last night and I didn't find anything. No one was there. And Mr. Hype was like, don't you dare go there again. And then there's a strobe effect of thin women turning fat and fart sounds.
Oh God, the fart sounds. I forgot about that. Oh my
And then
God.
these women were all sitting on a couch and it falls apart because it's
Haha,
funny.
the couch broke because they're so fat.
And then Mr. Hype has a voiceover and he says, fat relapse. And then Mr. Hype starts relapsing back into Dr. Heckle.
Yeah, that's the point where he realizes that he's not the handsome devil that he was at the moment. He's not that way permanently.
So as he comes back, everyone's happy to see him. Mrs. Finebottom was like, hey, Mr. Hype said that you were dying. And he's like, clearly I'm not. And he eventually, Coral comes into the office and she recounts how a creep, aka Mr. Hype, tried to pick her up and how
Yep,
she
on the
thought it
bus.
was death because he knew so much about her. She was really creeped out that Mr. Hype knew so much about her, despite her not knowing who it was. Mr. Heckle, though, is very interested, or Dr. Heckle, sorry. He went to doctor school. I should give him at least
Doctor
that.
school.
Dr. Heckle was like, was Mr. Hype handsome? She was like, who cares? Well, he was physically handsome, but you have it where it counts. You have inside beauty. I'm just skin deep.
Oh my God, I wrote that down too. This woman is like negging herself. It makes
Yeah.
no sense.
I don't get it.
It reminded me of that joke in I forget which episode of The Simpsons it was. The one with the Malibu Stacy doll, the talking Malibu Stacy doll,
Yeah.
where like she like pulls the cord, Lisa does, and it says, "Don't ask me, I'm just a girl." Oh
Yep.
my God, this poor woman.
It's interesting for sure. So, oh shit, where was I? Oh man, this whole movie's just okay. And then
Dr. Heckle is trying to
Dr.
like get her to eat caviar and drink champagne.
caviar
in
and
the
drink
doctor's office.
champagne. And then Dr. Heckle goes, "Do you want to know how I turned out looking like this?" He's like, "No one really knows." So he just went, "Do you want to hear a story about the way that I look?" Well, no one really knows how I turned out the way that I looked. So everything that he says beyond this is now a lie. And he was
Spoilers,
like,
I don't know.
my mom was sniffing glue when I was in the womb. She was sniffing glue when she was nursing me. So I guess sniffing glue is what caused all these horrible defects to happen.
Who knew?
And then he
Don't do
goes,
drugs, kids.
he's like, look at me. Who would nurse me now? And then Coral goes, well, I would nurse you now. I don't
He's a grown man.
if she knows what the word nursing means and that it's breastfeeding and not just taking care
like
of you.
Being a nurse, yeah. Oh God.
So she's stupid as well.
Just
So
like horrible, like blonde stereotypes. This poor woman.
the detective shows back up. Who knows why? And he follows Dr. Heckle outside of the doctor's office, and then there's wolf sounds. Then there's tons of fog
Oh
out
my
of
God.
nowhere.
The fog machine just is unloading on this town.
For the rest of the movie, any scene that involves anyone being outside, it is probably 80% fog.
Yes.
So as Dr. Heckle's walking down the road, he's drinking and he has the inner conflict of the voice of Mr. Hype going, "We should go back and eat some more paste." And he's like, "Not for a million." And Dr. Heckle meets the lady from the bunny burrito and she freaks out. And
Yep.
he's like, "Well, Mr. Hype would have murdered you." And then inside the head, Mr. Hype is like, "Well, I could have took her to a Chinese restaurant." Um, okay. The
I,
detective is watching all this unfold as well.
oh yeah, so he's kind of creeping along on the
Yeah.
staircase, like, but he's following really, really close
Yeah.
to Dr. Heckle, like way closer than you would think you could stay on like hidden. You would definitely hear this guy walking behind you.
It was really weird. So Dr. Heckle goes back to the doctor's office. He can't find the paste, and he's like, "Okay, maybe got thrown out in the garbage." So he goes into a dumpster, and then in walks Dick Miller. Dick Miller says, "Boss doesn't want any more bodies at the dump." And he opens up the dumpster, and Mr. Heckle's in there, and he's like, "I got it. I got the vial." Uh
Oh god, and I think in this scene is probably one of the best like lazy set pieces. There's when because he jumps in the dumpster and the lids kind of start to fall on top of him. There's a part where you can see where they had like double-sided tape stuck to the wall where the like to keep the lid up, and you can see the tape when the lid falls down. It's just like this big wad of tape
uh
stuck against the wall, and they just hang on that shot for a while. It's just so lazy.
that's horrible. So Dick Miller, knowing that the boss doesn't want any more bodies at the dumpster, he calls Officer Flea Collar
Uh,
and says that there's a monster in my garbage and that you need to send someone out because it's eating my carrot. Now, I thought the guy that shows up was Officer Flea Collar, but it's actually someone else. And it's if you thought that Oliver Reed was just putty, then what the hell did you think of the fat
the,
anthropomorphic cop that shows up? Because
the giant clay cop.
he looks like Garbodor became a real person.
Pokemon jokes, folks.
Yes.
Got him. This, yeah, he definitely is. I mean, yeah, you're right. Like Oliver Reed looks, he thinks he's hot shit, but this cop is just got to be a lady killer in this universe because, yeah, he's just got that like Mr. Potato Head look. It's just perfect.
I tried to look up who this actor was. I couldn't find who it was. To kind of like I guess describe what this man looks like. He looks like he's a guy wearing a fat suit and this giant mustache and huge sunglasses,
The
even though it's the
mustache,
middle of the
yeah,
night.
it looked
Um,
really fake.
Andy Kaufman at one point had a alternate persona. What was the name of that person? It was like
Um,
Tony Clifton. Tony Clifton. It looks the guy. I'm gonna send you a picture of Tony
oh boy.
Clifton, and I'm telling you, if this could be him. Oh my God! What if this was Andy Kaufman in the film? This is Tony
No.
Clifton.
Okay.
That looks like
Okay.
him, right?
Yeah, but that is absolutely the giant cop, the giant Mr. Potato Head cop. That's definitely
It's
him.
it's insane. So Tony Clifton shows up as a cop with two other police officers with him, and I swear they're twins.
They okay, yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. They all have that same kind of stupid haircut. Like it was like a kind of vaguely mullety look, but they also have that same stupid mustache, and they're wearing the aviators. They all look identical, except one of them is giant.
In fact, the two other officers are Michael and Steve Sassone. They are billed as twin officers, Officer Hollow Point and Officer Dum Dum.
Really? That's how he's credited?
Yes.
Wow,
So
talk about like getting character names from 5-year-olds.
exactly. So these cops they show up. They're gonna try to arrest Dr. Heckle for being a hideous freak inside of the dumpster.
Yep.
Dr. Heckle is running away now, and he ends up in just some random woman's house.
That's right. He like jumps through a random open window, right?
Yep, and then he gets into the bed as if it's okay, and he's like, "Oh, don't scream, woman." Obviously, the woman runs away and she calls the cops and she's like, "There's a monster in my house. I need someone to come and get this." I guess they live in a world where monsters do exist
I
because no
guess,
one's
yeah.
questioning this.
What the hell do you mean by monster lady?
So the woman comes back out. She has a gun. Meanwhile, Mr. Heckle, Dr. Heckle, has turned into Mr. Hype. And Mr. Hype has kind of put in the moves now on the lady. And he's like, hey, let's, smooch and we're going to love each other.
This woman immediately forgets that she's in basically a hostage situation at this point. But no, this lump of clay is just too good looking for her to ignore.
And then again, he freaks out because he doesn't get the reciprocation that he's looking for, and he smashes her face in a mirror in probably one of the best special effects in the entire film.
Oh yeah, like for sure. I mean, again, it comes out of nowhere because it's like, oh, this is my goofy Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde spoof, and then holy shit, the most graphic looking like head smash that I've seen in a movie like this.
Yeah,
It was
I was
really out of nowhere.
I was very shocked by how graphic it got, and
Yeah.
I did comment like that was cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Like I was going to say before how the special makeup effects in this movie are generally pretty garbage, except for this one spot. They actually did a good job.
So of course, Mr. Hype has to get rid of the body, so he just carries it out and puts it into like an oil drum. There's like oil drums just out in the street, and he just nonchalantly drops her body into one.
And her like legs and arms are all like sticking
Yeah.
out the top.
So we cut to Hype in a more traditional Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde costume. He's got like the top hat and a cape.
Yeah. What was the why did they put him in like a period specific getup? It just looks
It
like a Halloween costume.
it makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Not, well, I mean, yeah. Yeah.
And then you get this horrible ramped up speed climbing. He's like scaling the building.
I love the idea that the editor is just bored out of his mind. He's like, "Oh God, this is going on forever." And he just like cranks up the fast forward button.
He's getting pissed having to edit this. And then we see Coral and her boss. They're drinking wine, so there's like a little romance in the air there.
Yep,
Mr. Hype dispatches the boss by hitting him with
a flower pot.
a flower pot. That's right.
Yeah, more
And then
cartoonish nonsense.
he gets the champagne and he goes inside of the bedroom and he's like, "I don't need the champagne. I'll take you." Now, there seems to be this inability for people in films to realize that another person is with them after the lights have turned
Oh,
out.
okay, yeah, I noticed this too. Because like I think she says right before this, he's like, "Oh, keep the lights off. I want it to be a surprise." And then this guy gets in the bed with her, who is obviously twice the size, twice the girth, twice the sweatiness of the guy that she was with before, and
Yeah.
somehow doesn't notice.
Like a foot shorter too. People generally smell differently too.
Yeah, this
But
guy
yeah.
looks like he smells too.
He probably does in that cape and the hat. He's
Is
probably
that-
sweaty. He just scaled a building.
Is that wet
Um,
clay I smell?
Exactly. Ooh, clay. um, so as they're kind of like kissing and stuff like that, he transforms back into Dr. Heckle, and Coral isn't afraid of Dr. Heckle. She's like, "Why are you in my arms? You should be taking care of my feet." And the police come in, and the boss is like, "Hey, that guy hit me in the head over the head with a pot." And
he's like still has a flower on his head too, doesn't he? At
yeah,
this point?
he does. And the detective is there. He's like, "You're under arrest for murder and assault with a flower pot."
Goo-hoo-hoo.
It's comedy. Kind of.
Comedy.
So Dr. Heckle's in the slammer. He calls Dr. Fat Doctor, Pill Doctor,
Diet doctor.
Diet Doctor, Fat Doctor. He's in the bed with his patient, though, with two of his patients.
Oh, that's right.
And Heckle's asking for bail money, and Hinkle's like, "I'll think about it." Did you notice though the detective in the background of the scene while he's watching Dr. Heckle make the call? Someone's trying to strangle him, but the joke is, remember that detective? He doesn't feel pain.
Oh, that's right. Because he's got his back up to the bar, so one of the
Yep.
prisoners has got his hands around his neck. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's not how that works. Like you would still suffocate if your windpipe is being crushed.
Exactly. So as Dr. Heckyl is transported to his jail cell, he's met by a I don't know, uh little person.
Yes, little person. I think that's the correct way to refer to him.
Okay, I want to make sure. So now the little person that's in there is Tony Cox. He's actually a very famous actor when it comes to being a little
Okay.
person
I was
in
wondering.
films.
He did look familiar.
He's from Bad Santa, Me, Myself, and Irene, Spaceballs. So he's
Oh,
done.
he's the elf in Bad Santa. You're right.
Yep,
Oh, yes, he's great.
he's done quite a bit. Um, he was also in Leprechaun too.
Of course he was.
So his name is Bad Williams, and he is a little person with nunchucks, and he starts doing like a little nunchuck routine, and he goes, "Just don't step on my shadow, and I won't kill you."
Oh God, like this is so degrading because like the joke is that haha, it's a little person. Like
Yep.
there's no cleverness or interesting writing going on. It's just like haha, he's a little person. Get it? And he's got then like in the set there in the jail cell. There's like even like a little toilet that they
Yep.
put next to him. It's just the most offensive thing ever.
It's yeah, there's like a little alcove. It's horrible.
Yeah,
So Dr. Ho and Dr. Fat Pill show up with the bail money. Um, in between that, Dr. Heckyl gives Bad Williams a little bit of the paste. And after he gives him the paste, Bad Williams just crawls into the alcove. And as he does that, Heckyl transforms into Hype, right?
more
And
strobe
then
effects.
so everyone shows up and is like, "How did you get in here?" Come on, guys. They're locked inside of here. How do you not know?
It's like that. It's like that stupidity that people seem to have with Superman, where Clark Kent just never seems to be in the same place at the same time as Superman, and no one
Yep.
can put two and two together.
And if they couldn't put two and two together, as they're walking away, Bad Williams comes out and he's a tall person
But with a high pitched
with
voice,
a high
ha
pitched
ha ha.
voice. As they exit, we see a police sign that says, "Don't call us, we'll call you." And Hype asks Hinkle if he understands why he's there and not Heckle. And no, despite being a doctor, probably an intelligent person, he doesn't understand why. So
even
Hype,
even Heckle is like, "How are you guys not getting this?"
yeah. So Hype informs Hinkle and Ho that the pace turns the person who takes it into what they want, meaning a short
Yeah.
person turns tall, a fat person turns skinny, an ugly person turns beautiful.
And Doctor Who.
Oh my god! So as he's doing this, he turns Hype turns back into Heckle. There's more fog, and then we see Doctor Who eat the paste, and they're all like, "What? Why the hell did you do that?" And Doctor Who really has no reason to do it beyond just doing it,
Because the
right?
movie said that he needed to do it because we needed an awkward scene.
While all this is going on, it seems like the entire police force are following this van, which is really weird because he just got out of prison. Anywho, the
That's
cops
right,
try
yeah.
to capture Dr. Heckle, but Doctor Who intervenes and starts attacking all the cops with feathers and tickles them. And they all start laughing. And everyone's having like a really good time. And then Doctor Who finally transforms into Mrs. Finebum,
Dun,
the
dun,
secretary from
dun.
earlier.
Oh God.
So the man has turned now into a woman. That is what he aspired to be. The cops try to take the pace from Dr. Heckle, but he throws it, saying it needs to be destroyed. And Dr. Fat Pill goes after it.
Dr.
Dr.
Fat
Wait, what's his name?
Diet Doctor.
Diet Dr. Fat Pill. Uh, he looks at a cage and he goes, "Oh, it's a bird cage." And a cop comes up. Tony Clifton, the cop, comes up and
That's
he
right.
shoots the lock. Now, did you notice that the lock is absolutely worthless in this entire scene? Because he shoots the lock, he unhinges it, but he doesn't take the metal piece out that would be, locking it,
Yeah, you
and he
think you have
just
to like
pushes the door open.
yeah, exactly. He doesn't even have to like take the pieces apart. It the
Yeah.
lock is like he shoots it and it's still just sitting there in the part where it's actually like the actual hinge, the latch, and it made you he just pulls it wide open.
Yep. Unbeknownst to Diet Dr. Fat Pill, he's entering the Bengal tiger cage, and you hear screams of him being eaten alive. But he shows up just in time to give the detective the paste, and then he's dragged away into the darkness, thankful for the sweet release of death, so he no longer has to be in this film.
Oh, thank God.
Hype shows up and just steals the paste away from the detective, and
Just
uh,
the worst cops.
Fine Bum shows up, and they handcuff them all together around a tree or something like that.
Oh,
And
that's right.
then
Yeah.
Hype and Fine Bum, they're getting off on each other, saying how great and beautiful they are. The detective is like, I'm gonna escape these handcuffs, and he bites them off.
Again, like that. Yeah, that's not how that condition where you can't feel pain. I still don't think you're going to be biting through steel handcuffs, dude.
No,
That's not
you're
how this
not.
works.
It's horrible. But the detectives, they escape, and we see Hype and Fine Bum driving away, and they're complimenting on how great they are, and then they start making out. And then, can you guess what's about to happen next? They transform
Oh,
into
gee
their former
whiz.
selves, and it's two guys kissing.
Oh
Uh,
God.
and then,
Fuck this
probably
movie.
the most awkward scene in the film, Doctor Who starts tickling himself with a feather, and then he slowly like fades away, and the detective comes up and goes, "Yep, tickled himself to death."
Tickled to death. If only we could have tickled ourselves to death instead of
Yes,
watching this movie.
we're almost there, Greg.
We're
So
so close.
Heckle runs to Karen's place. He knocks on the door, and when she opens the door, it's Hype. And then he turns back into Heckle. And then there's a little bit of sweet talking, and she's like, "Oh, I don't care. I'm a liberated person. I don't think you're ugly."
Yeah,
But
at this
Heckle,
point, like we're getting they've dispensed with the strobe light effect with the transformations because now it's just every time the camera cuts away from him, he transforms.
yes,
It's
it's
really it
horrible.
was really jarring at first until you realize what was going on because like they don't establish the geography of the room all that well. So you think like, wait, is he in two places at once? I like, are they split personalities now? Is this like a Gollum situation?
Oh,
It was really disorienting.
if only it was that good.
Ah, Andy Serkis. We need a remake of Dr. Heckyl and Mr. Hype with Andy Serkis and Dick Miller.
That would be great.
Dick Miller hologram.
Heckle doesn't believe her that she doesn't care that he's ugly. And he goes, "Shut up and kiss me." And they close their eyes, and he transforms into Hype again. Hype tries to attack her and says that he's going to kill her. She slaps him, and it transitions him into Heckle. Heckle gets on the bed, and he's like, "When Hype comes back the next time, he's going to kill you." So she goes, "Well, let's make your dream come true and have sex." So she starts to disrobe, and Heckle and Coral attempt to start having sex, but the detective comes in, and
Wham.
he cocks his gun, and he shoots Heckle, and he turns into Hype. Then he turns back into Heckle. Then he turns back into Hype, and Hype is threatening him, and Heckle's dying because he's shot, and he's like, Coral's like, "Oh, your lips are dry," and then she rubs more paste on him, and then
Whoops.
there's this transformation of a monkey, different animals, different monsters, different people.
Different people from the same movie.
Yes, and then it's like a spleen or something, like the intestines.
Yeah, it's like quick flashes of all those like the animals, the people, like you said, and then we flashes to yeah, it looks like a puddle of like silly putty, like wet silly putty or something.
Yeah,
And
and then you hear Dr. Heckle go, "Now we're dead, and I'm still a virgin," and that's the end of the film.
he disappears and we get credits and we all just want to hang ourselves.
Now, Greg, I want to read you something.
Okay.
I remember this review from Roger Ebert, and he's talking about the 1994 movie North, but I think it surmises my opinion on this film.
Ooh, do tell.
So I quote the late, great Roger Ebert when I say, "I hated this movie. Hated, 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 hated this movie. Hated it. Hated every simpering, stupid, vacant, audience insulting moment of it. Hated the sensibility that thought anyone would like it. Hated the implied insult to the audience by its belief that anyone would be entertained by it.
Scathing. What was that for? You said North?
It's a movie called North
Is that the one
with
with Elijah Wood?
and Bruce Willis. Yeah,
Oh God.
that movie sucks too, but it has nothing on this film.
Hated it. I hated it.
I hated every
Perfect words,
single
Roger.
solitary moment of this film.
Yeah, it was it yeah. I just I'm speechless at this point because I feel like sometimes I feel like I was nitpicking this because like, oh yeah, you wouldn't be able to chew through handcuffs, but like in a good comedy, you suspend in any good movie, you suspend disbelief because you buy into what the movie is giving you and it's entertaining and you're kind of willing to just go along with it and roll with the punches and especially in a comedy like a slapstick comedy like this was supposed to have been where characters do weird goofy things that are impossible, but when you hate a movie as much as we hated this one, every little imperfection just drives it's like nails on a chalkboard.
Yeah. It it was so rough to get through. Now, the movie had a budget of $750,000.
What?
$50,000 of it went to the writer director.
That wait. Almost $1 million went into the making of this. How is
Yeah,
that possible? It looks so cheap.
it does. Every set, every effect, everything in
Yeah.
this film felt cheap.
I think the only time watching the entire thing where the part actually like it looked like a movie that actually had some, like some interesting visuals was when they first do those night scenes where like the detective is kind of stalking Dr. Heckyl and we get some like all that like the fog, it's too much fog, but it like it kind of sets a mood and there's some kind of cool lighting with like a lot of like reds and greens and blues. It reminded me of Creep Show a little bit where like a lot of like primary color like lighting kind of looked cool. It was the only part of the movie that I actually admired from, like a visual perspective. The rest of it just looks so cheap and terrible.
So now here is something that Griffith, the writer director, had to say about the film.
Mm,
Canon could that this isn't his quote yet, but Canon couldn't release this film theatrically. It was sold to cable television. So,
unsurprising.
according to Griffith, Heckle and Hype could have been a very good picture. Dr. Heckle is a monster podiatrist. He is very humble and meek and helpful and nice to everybody. His attitude is that good-looking guys can get away with murder. Oliver was great as Heckle. Wonderful. He played the part with a kind of New York accent and everything. But when he was Hype, he didn't know how to do it. Reed played Hype as Oliver Reed, slow and ponderous. He didn't understand my interpretation. So the picture jars, and half the people get up and walk out.
Yeah, no shit.
I mean, it's true. I would say out of the two characters, Oliver Reed definitely plays Henry Heckle a lot better than Mr. Hype. Mr. Hype is just asshole.
Yeah, he just all asshole, creepy and self-centered and really terrible to women. Ugh.
You would think that like the Mr. Hype character would have this oozing charisma in order to lure these women into wanting to be with him. But the entire time that he gets a woman, you're like, why?
He's
Why would
just an
you ever want to
asshole.
be with him?
Like immediately he's an asshole. Like that. You're right. You're absolutely right. What they should have done was he starts off really charming, and then we see him descend into that narcissism that
Yeah.
eventually drives people away. And, oh, he was the monster all along. Like you need to let the audience build up to that. Don't just immediately start off with him being a creeper who's sexually assaulting women in his apartment building. That's not
Don
the way to do it.
Draper is the perfect example. Don Draper, you can't help but love the character, but he's so sleazy.
He's
But
terrible. Yeah.
you understand why women want to be with Don Draper. I,
Hmm.
there's no way, unless this is an island where Henry Heckle and Mr. Hype are the only men on it, would I understand why any woman would want to be with Mr. Hype.
No, he like you said, he immediately comes off creepy and terrible and doesn't ease into that at all. He doesn't try to charm them. He just sort of grabs them and takes them where he wants to go.
I think this is like a perfect example. of people not understanding comedy, or like it seems like it's one of those films where it started off as a joke. Some Golan and Globus were probably like, wow, a comedy of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We should do this.
That's gold. Yeah, I mean,
And
in their
just
defense, it's kind of a cool idea where they reverse the roles, and I can see that having potential, but I'm sure it's been done before. I just can't
it
think of an example. I'm sure
it
it's been done
has been
better.
done before, and it has been done better with the Nutty Professor.
Oh yeah, absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's exactly what. That's a perfect example.
Yep. Sure, it's not a horror movie, but it's funny and it shows the duality of man. You have the meek, meager, if you're watching the Eddie Murphy version, fat Professor Clump, and then he turns into Buddy Love, the smooth, suave, sophisticated
That's right.
version of him. And you can understand at the beginning why people would want to be around Buddy Love, because he's quick-witted and he's funny and he's handsome and he's just oozing with like sexuality and charisma. And then he eventually, like you said, turns into such an asshole that no one wants to be around him.
Exactly. You know what it is? What you just said, that actually also reminds me of that bit in Family Matters where Steve Urkel invents a machine to turn
Yes,
himself into Stefan Urkel.
Stefan Urkel. And you can understand why Laura would want to be with Stefan.
Yeah.
But eventually Stefan becomes
Gets
too
too full
big.
of
The,
himself.
the,
Yeah.
the power becomes too much. And then they realize, oh, there was nothing wrong with the original version of this person.
Oh man. Man, that was a great show. You know what I'd much rather have been watching than this movie is Family Matters.
Well, welcome to Family Cast, the podcast about discussing family matters and other similar shows.
There's similar 90s sitcoms.
We'll talk about Step by Step and a couple episodes of Full House.
Full House. Oh,
Oh,
all much better watches than this pile of garbage.
it was so bad. It's a half star for me.
I was gonna say I don't think I had to ask, but I knew you were gonna rate it definitely less than one. I mean, it's if I could give it zero, I'm just gonna give it 0 stars. Like I think I mentioned this a couple times in previous episodes where I reserve like the really low, like less than 1 stars for movies that I actively hate or that actively offended me in some way. This movie is easily in that category.
It it is highly offensive. It's just so damn bad.
Yeah,
Now,
it's terrible to get through.
Greg, the next one is supposed to be The Apple. The Apple is a 1980 film, also called Star Rock. The tagline is The
Yeah.
Power of Rock in 1994. It is considered to be one of the worst films ever made. I ask
Yes.
of you, can we do this one not next week, but the following week?
Okay,
Can
I was hoping that you would suggest that. Yes, I think we need a palate cleanse
okay.
between
I
this.
I would much rather attempt a different film, and the film would be New Year's Evil.
Ooh, is that a
The,
New Year's Eve themed slasher movie?
It is. I've
Yes.
never seen one set around this time. Lonely women wanting to celebrate New Year's Eve become easy prey for a maniacal, murdering misogynist whose New Year's resolution is to kill women at every stroke of midnight.
Dun,
Which
dun,
which
dun.
means to me, if there's 24 midnights, he's going to attempt to kill 24 women.
That's a lot of killing for one slasher
Oh,
movie.
it's
Can it
I
live up
would
to it? No, it can't.
I would much rather attempt this one than The Apple.
Yeah, I feel like we can't do two bad comedies in a row. I think that's like The Apple's sort of like a musical comedy, right?
It's which I'm already predispositioned to
To
hate,
hate it.
because I am not a fan of musicals.
No, yeah, like we need to. This was a hard thing to get to. We need to kind of like you said, we need to work up to that. And we need something a little bit more in our wheelhouse. I think a good slasher movie to sort of to kind of refresh ourselves and kind of gear up for what I can only imagine is going to be a marathon of pain.
Uh,
That is The Apple.
exactly. Yeah, I just don't. I love watching bad movies. I like to see what maybe the intention originally was. Like someone sat down and they put time and effort into this. And I like to see the some semblance of like, I get it. I get what they were going for. And the Apple probably has that, but Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype had none of it. And I just don't I just can't I can't
Eh,
risk it.
I just can't, Greg. I can't.
It's
Yeah.
so it's so telling about how bad this movie was
Yeah,
that
like the fact we almost have like bad movie PTSD from this movie.
yeah.
We don't want to go back to another terrible comedy because it's just going to be too scarring.
Exactly. There's times where like you read a book or you watch a movie and it's so great and you go, where else is there to go? And then every once in a while you watch such a bad movie and you go, I don't
Oh,
ever want
there.
to go back. Like I don't even want to watch a movie for the rest of the day. This was so bad.
You're just burnt out. Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned some of the other episodes where movies that are surprisingly good, like the other end of the spectrum, were like, yeah, I think we could watch that again. I'd go back and see that again, maybe next Halloween or something. Watch The Godsend again. That was good. This is firmly on the other side where I never want to look at or think about this movie ever again. I can only imagine. Actually, yeah, I'm genuinely curious how many plays this has gotten on Amazon. We've got to be some of the only ones within 10 years.
That would be a really interesting statistic to get. How many people have watched? I really wish they would release something like that. You know, like, okay, this has, X amount of plays from Amazon Prime. Um,
Actually, did it when we go to the Amazon Prime page, did it have like how many people had rated it?
you know what? I'm actually looking that up right now on letterboxd.com. 160 people since the inception of Letterboxd have watched this film.
That is shockingly high.
The average rating is 2.6.
What?
There are 11 half-star ratings. I am one of them.
Who are the chuds who rated this above 2.5 to give it that average?
Exactly. There are 3 assholes that gave it 5 stars. Heather, Immortal Knight, and Maggie Savage. I'm calling you out right now. You're stupid.
What were they? Did they rate anything alongside of it?
They didn't. They didn't even defend themselves in
Maybe
this.
when they were watching. Okay, so they were okay. Here's what I'm thinking happened. They were watching the movie, and they had a violent seizure because of the horrible strobe effects of the transformations, and they accidentally hit the 5-star button on their app,
I
and then
have
they died because of how terrible the movie is.
I hope it's just a satire account and they're giving bad movies good reviews and hopes to dupe someone like us into watching it.
Oh,
But
that's it's the grandchildren of what's his name, the director Griffin.
oh god,
Gotta get
horrible.
gotta bump up Grandpa's legacy.
Yeah. Do you have a quote of the week?
I do actually.
If
So
you played a fucking fart sound right now, that would have been great.
we're here all week, folks. No, so the original quote of the week was that line about this perfume must have been a bargain. What is it, war surplus? Um, we already talked about that line, so I did have a backup, and it was the other line for when Dr. Heckyl is in his office with Coral, and she says that horribly like self burn of I'm only skin deep, but you're beautiful on the inside.
Oh, it's it's so bad.
It's just
It's
so painful.
so bad. I don't get I just don't get it. I don't get where they're getting this from. I don't understand how they wrote this. I don't get a single thing.
The fact that you read that quote and it sounded like he said he thought that this would have been a good idea. I maybe in more capable hands. I don't know.
Maybe. It has to be. There has to be a good way of doing there has to be a good way of doing this exact film, but funny.
Yeah, they did. Like you said, it was the Nutty Professor.
The Nutty Professor. Well, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. From my understanding, you can only leave a review on iTunes. So just listen to the podcast, get those numbers up. Also, while you're at it, go ahead and give us some constructive criticism on how we can make this podcast more enjoyable to you. If it's to never talk about Dr. Heckle and Mr. Hype again, I can guarantee you that probably won't happen because this is now the baseline for the worst film we have ever seen. But you can follow us on Twitter at That's Canon. You can also email us at that'scanon@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you and answer some questions. Maybe you have questions about why was Oliver Reed in this film? Or
Who is Oliver Reed?
who is Oliver Reed? Is he really just a hump of clay? We can answer those questions for you, or at least we'll try. And Greg, since we said it,
That is canon.
I hated that movie. It is so bad.
On the one night they were celebrating New Year's Eve, he was out, ending their life.
I'm going to commit murder at midnight.